Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlan, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Stewart Muir, Executive Director of the ResourceWorks Society. His website, resourceworks.com. You can find him on Twitter at SJMuir. Welcome back to the show, Stewart.
Thank you, Jim.
Stewart, natural gas, how important is it to BC, and why has, over just the last few years, has there become opposition to natural gas? I always thought it was a clean burning fuel, and everywhere that instituted natural gas, the smog disappeared.
Yeah, that's right. Natural gas has replaced coal, mostly in the United States, resulting in great reductions to greenhouse gas emissions in the U.S., and that is something that is being looked at around the world. Everyone wants the same thing. In China, they're building 500 coal plants. Now, it's the latest technology, probably pretty good coal plants, but they're also trying to diversify their energy mix. They want renewables. They also want natural gas, which they can get from Canada if it's in the form of LNG that's put on a ship. And that's why we're building the LNG Canada project, $40 billion project in Kitimat, because these countries, I mean, Japan too, and Taiwan, Korea, they want to reduce their greenhouse gas output. I mean, that's a very reasonable thing to want. There are some proponents in Canada of not letting them have access to that. The belief is that if you choke off the supply of reliable, affordable, cleaner fuels, it will force those countries to adopt solar panels and other solutions. Unfortunately, the world doesn't operate that way, and although those solutions do fit into the energy mix, you also need to have reliable industrial scale supplies of energy, and natural gas is probably the best solution we have right now to do that. So that's the business case and the environmental case for LNG and natural gas.
Now, 500 coal-fired plants in China. I know that they've mandated the purchase of electric cars and they promote it. What good are electric cars if just down the street there's a coal-powered electrical plant?
Well, they're probably good for reducing tailpipe emissions. And if you go to Beijing, I mean, we've all seen the smog they get there. So you can reduce that and still get the energy from higher emitting electricity sources. So it doesn't solve that issue. It's more about local environment, and that is a big problem. I mean, it kills people that they breathe that stuff in. So there's definitely a win there, but it doesn't change the higher level issue of gross emissions for a country if that's their situation. So they do want to have access to things like natural gas to diversify and have a reliable grid. I mean, look at Texas. It was a complicated situation down there last week when they lost power. Lots of factors. We probably don't know all of them yet, but certainly they had frozen wind turbines, but they also had frozen gas pipelines. You know, it was not easy to say, look, this is proof that one of these works or doesn't work. It was more to me proof that it's complicated. And it's complicated in Asian markets too, where they want LNG. And they also want to get out of energy poverty. I mean, who's to say in Canada that it's unreasonable for someone in India to not have to cook over wood smoke in their kitchen, which is like smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day. I think it's reasonable for people to want to have a cleaner environment in their homes, and natural gas does that.
Also, for BC, it's a huge revenue generator for the province. I remember when Carol Taylor was finance minister, she told me she had nightmares about the price of natural gas falling because she said, one slight change in price affected millions in revenue for the province. How important is natural gas to keep taxes down in BC?
Yeah, well, that's a good question, and actually we're hearing a little about the issue because right now there's some attempts to characterize a fiscal system that was put in place back when she was finance minister that has allowed there to be great benefits from natural gas, and it's being cast as subsidies, but that's inherently incorrect. We have an incentive system to create credits. Deep well credits have been an enormous financial economic boom area for British Columbians. $90 billion worth of gas investment flowed into BC because of this program. And now that investment, if it didn't come here, it would have gone to Alberta because the Montney Shale sits over the Alberta-BC border. You could drill on one side or the other. And BC said back in the 90s, hey, wouldn't it be a good idea if we get those drillers to come to the BC side? How can we do that? Oh, let's give them an incentive to do that. We do that with the film industry. In fact, for every dollar of tax credits for the gas industry, there's $2 in tax credits to go to the film industry. The film industry doesn't even build infrastructure that creates, benefits for agents. They have a lot of fun time making films, but the gas industry just very quietly creates these enormous benefits, like $24 billion in government revenues from the gas industry in BC, and 10,000 jobs. It's a huge thing. It's also the most innovative part because I always have to improve things, and they're under pressure from the green side of government to make sure their equipment is up to date. So they're always in the lab. They're always in the factory improving the equipment so it leaks less. Other things they do to improve the efficiencies of every step of the process, and then they pay the highest wages. So there's a whole bunch of other benefits, but those are some of the key ones. And once you look at all the facts, I think you have to think, well, how do we make sure we don't lose this industry? And the answer to that is quite simple. We keep ensuring that it's greening itself up.
Well, one of the problems I think they had were methane leaks from production facilities. Have they cleaned up that problem?
Yeah, I know a few years ago, I think it was the David Suzuki Foundation, they went up with a measurement device to see if they could find some methane from gas, and they came out with a report, but they weren't actually able to say with any certainty whether it was cows that were grazing nearby or from gas wells that this methane was coming from. So, there's some questions over aspects of that. I mean, clearly we don't want to lose gas into the atmosphere, but you know what? Losing gas is losing money. So there's a very clear business incentive for companies that operate that infrastructure to not let it leak. Why would they want to lose that money? It would be stupid to do that. And that's why they're tightening things up all the time. And then they're getting actually incentives. They're getting more royalty credits from the government if they achieve targets in greening up natural gas. So I would say all the right things are happening. We're going in the direction we need to in order to sustain this industry.
We'll have more with Stewart Muir right after this.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications, patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Stewart Muir. Stewart, you said we may be going into a commodities super cycle. How does that play out for Canada?
Yeah, I think yesterday there was the Biden-Trudeau call. The critical minerals agenda, which is a shared one between the two countries, is very much on the agenda. The fact that it made it into the script of such an encounter means that it is a high priority. Critical minerals being a bunch of obscure ones that the average person, including myself, has never heard of. But these are the elements required for energy and technology innovation now and in the future. So the value of these things are often very scarce, and they can be difficult, require a lot of energy to bring forward. You've got strategic minerals, things like uranium that we produce in Saskatchewan. You've also got the elements needed for batteries, like lithium and cobalt, and the elements needed for electric motors. There's a whole bunch of of industrial needs in order to make any of these things happen, and it's difficult to get all these metals. And in some cases, one country, China, has got a lock on production of rare earth elements, which to its trade competitors is a little bit scary. And I think given the current diplomatic issues with Chinese relations for many countries, it's a bit awkward. So I think lots of people are saying, well, what if we can get those rare earths from Canada, from South America, from Australia? And so there's lots of action in that space.
Well, Saskatoon's opened up an office to explore for rare earths. There's, I think, a couple of projects in Quebec. Canada has the most proven reserves of rare earths on the planet. I know one of the reasons why President Trump wanted to buy Greenland was because that it also has rare earths, and the plant there, though, is owned and operated by China.
Yes. Plus, they're underserved by casinos. Yeah. There are moves, China is making in energy in Africa right now, as some of the Europeans say, oh, we don't want to invest in fossil fuels. Guess what China and Russia are doing? They're investing in fossil fuels in Africa and in Russia on a massive scale. And private equity, private investments are doing that. I think driving potential for a super cycle from the oil price side. It's too early to say whether what's being driven is just OPEC manipulation. Is it a bit of rebound from the pandemic? Is there, to reflect the very healthy, buoyant stock markets? Is there going to be a trend in oil prices that will benefit Canadian oil? I mean, lots of people have opinions on it, and I don't think mine is the authoritative one, but I do think there are healthy conditions for there to be, probably in the near term, at minimum, sustainable price around $60, and then, choose your expert for the upside or downside from that. I think it's going to go up, personally.
Canada has rich copper and nickel reserves, and for your average EV, I think they need 300 pounds of copper. A lot of nickel goes into the batteries, lithium as well. Is that a good sign for Canada, and should they start looking for new copper mines in the country? And I know BC has a lot of copper.
Yeah, well, this is so great for those copper mines we have in BC. Just tremendous news to see copper over $4, and that I think, again, the experts are saying, well, is it going to last or not last? Well, who knows? But I think there's a good chance that as we see an economic global rebound, that the metal side of it will be strong. We're seeing on the forest product side, on lumber prices, fantastic performance by some of the BC-based lumber companies. They are, I think, performing very well right now because of American consumers. A lot of people were predicting early in the pandemic that there would be this sort of depression. People would have less money. They'd be hiding out at home, not doing much, not spending much money. But what really happened? Well, they were getting all this money from the government. They weren't spending on other things, so they were saving money. They were making money in their stock investments, and stuck at home. Hey, let's do a renovation. So you've got this enormous demand of renovations and new home builds that are surging. That's why we've got higher prices. It's great for BC and Alberta, forest producers. And is it sustainable over time? I don't know. I mean, I think that's going to be more cyclical. We'll see. We've got a new attempt by the Biden administration to resurrect some of the more odious aspects of their unfair attack on Canadian softwood. So we'll see whether Biden is going to be good for Canada or just be a Canada hater. We'll see. But, other areas, natural gas has been very low. The last 2 years were historically low prices for natural gas. And here's the thing. We've got to get the LNG projects finished in BC, because that's how we will get the full proper value for the gas in international markets. Right now, we just, we have no choice really but to give it away basically to the States. Yes, it creates a lot of revenues. It creates a lot of benefits, but, you do want to get the fair market value for what you produce. And, if we see, sustained high gas prices, which we saw over the winter, LNG has been, soaring in price. That's a benefit that if we had the ability to export LNG, we would be getting the benefit from today. So let's giddy up on getting those projects like, wood fiber LNG, and Canada LNG, LNG Canada in Kitimat. Got to get those finished.
We'll have more with Stewart Muir right after this.
Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Stewart Muir. Stewart, what does the future face of energy look like? There's a debate going on between two big names about that right now.
Yes, that's right. There's a new book out. Bill Gates, who needs no introduction. He's approaching it, I would say, like a computer programmer. I did a little computer programming at university. This is where I learned that the way to solve any complex problem and make a computer program out of it is to break it down to many, many small steps. It could be hundreds, thousands, or millions of small steps. And then you solve each step individual. And that's how Bill Gates created Microsoft, by taking a computer programmer's mentality to things. And you know what? That's what he's done. Since getting out of active business, he's become quite the philanthropist. He wants to eradicate disease, and he's got this foundation with his wife Melinda. They do great works around the country, around the world, and now he wants to tackle energy. So he's written a book. It's called How to Avoid a Climate Disaster. Now, he comes out last week. What happens? Bill Gates publishes a book, and then Bill McKibben, who's a prominent climate commentator and activist in the States, he immediately says, oh no, Bill's got it all wrong. Bill Gates doesn't know what he's talking about. You can't apply technology and innovation to energy problems. You just need to get off fossil fuels. So it's kind of into that mantra, which is, it's more of a slogan than it is a solution. And you have these sort of grand hypotheses about 100% renewable that when you look at them, well, we'll see. I mean, it's all promise. It's not delivery. Yes, there are some interesting things happening. Yes, there's big investments into scaled renewable, and it's getting cheaper. All that is happening. It's real. But at the same time, that doesn't solve things. In fact, I've looked this up, Jim. If all new cars were electric by 2025, okay, and then by 2040, the entire fleet around the world of light-duty vehicles, of cars, SUVs, if all those were electric, what would happen to liquid fuels, to the use of gasoline and oil? It would be the same in 2040 as it was in 2013. That's a projection done by a major oil company that had an analyst division. So you might say, oh, it's an oil company saying that. Well, you can look at their figures and decide for yourself whether the figures are true. I've looked at them. I think the numbers do add up. And why is it? Well, it's because the growth in heavy-duty uses like shipping, road transport trucks, rail, and industrial uses of these fuels is going up. So it's really objectively speaking, I can't call it anything other than a myth that we can somehow eradicate fossil fuels from our energy system. Like, there's no rational basis for that argument right now. So what Gates is saying, because he knows this too, is, look, we need innovation. We need to change what we do. We need carbon capture and removal. And right now, by way of example, there's over 25 commercial scale ventures in carbon capture in the States. There's a number of projects in Canada, like Quest in northern Alberta, and the Boundary Dam project with a coal plant in Saskatchewan. And you've got a carbon capture pipeline in Alberta as well. There's stuff like that happening, and I think there's more innovation coming. That's one example. Hydrogen as well, which can be from natural gas, and you can create so-called blue hydrogen from natural gas, which doesn't create emissions, without creating emissions in the manufacture. I mean, it's a myth that blue hydrogen is an emission source. It's not. You capture the CO2 when you do that process. So between those two innovations alone, and then other process improvements, we can arrive at a much more efficient use and reduction of emissions. That's the Bill Gates mentality on this, and I think it's a very solid one.
Well, when we talk about technology solving problems, I remember reading this story about how in the late 1800s, New York was growing by 50,000 people a year, and everybody was using horses, and they estimated with that population growth and the concurring growth in the use of horses, the city would be buried under horse dung within a few years. But the automobile came along and solved that problem. I don't think it was deliberately done, but isn't that what we do, humans? If there's a crisis, we tend to develop the technology when the crisis happens, not before.
That's human nature, isn't it? And we go from sun up to sundown and wake up to a new day, and it's very tempting to revert to that primal sense of hey, it's a new day, no consequences, move forward. I think with energy, we do need to have that long-term view. We need to do things that are practical, and we're almost too smart for our own good as a species, and we have to figure out how to make sure we are sustainable in what we do. There's a lot of people saying, well, you're using up the planet too quickly given the number of people and our consumption habits. And I think if you look at what we actually do, I think that's true. It's hard to dispute that. How do we ensure that we are creating sustainability? And it might not be that all the ways that are being proposed to accomplish that are workable. I mean, you've got billions of people around the world who subsist on, pennies a day, who have no energy in their homes or their lives, except the most ancient kind, bicycles or cooking on wood fires. These people are starting to enjoy the benefits of today's hydrocarbon-based civilization in a way that has removed suffering and want from their lives. They wouldn't be human if they didn't want more of that for themselves and their families. And that's what they'll do. You might say, well, let's stop them from doing that. Well, I don't think we're going to be very successful to try that, which is what some people do advocate. I think we need to be practical, and we need to find ways to minimize harms and ensure that we've got a long-term view that works for everybody, including for the planet.
With the Keystone development being canceled, the pipeline by President Biden, does that mean the Trans Mountain Pipeline is going to be even more important than ever for Canada getting its oil and gas out to the international market?
Well, it will, for sure. And even though right now we have a relatively small pipeline going to the Pacific coast, we're seeing countries in the Asia Pacific and South Asia, like India, that are buying cargoes from Canada. You can't get it on a scaled basis right now. It's almost a custom thing because we don't have the extra export capacity right now. When in December 2022, which is not very far off, that pipeline expansion is working, it will then allow this. It's probably 80 years since the geologists first identified the potential of the Canadian oil sands to be an energy provider to the world. It's taken 80 years, 8 decades for this dream to come true, and it's because of Trans Mountain. And just recently, recent days and weeks, we've seen India buying cargoes of Canadian oil for their refineries. They have a bit of a problem right now. They're not getting the supplies they need from the Middle East, which, of course, look at a map, it's pretty close to India, but they're not getting what they want. There's instability from war that affects things, and demand issues. And plus, India is growing in prosperity. People do want to have energy, and so they are sourcing from Canada. But as I say, you can't do it if you wanted to on a mass scale because we don't have the capacity. So TMX, Trans Mountain, will allow for that, and that will be a step change in locking in global access to the most improving source of crude oil in the world. I know there's those who like to knock oil sands. There's a lot of careers built on on denigrating Canadians' efforts to do a good job with the oil sands. But the fact is, the emissions have been reduced by 30% over the last decade in the upstream of Canadian oil sands. They're now on a par in terms of emissions with the average U.S. barrel. And yet people who aren't informed on it, who are subject to prejudicial thinking, who don't wish to inform themselves because they've established a prejudice in their minds, they are still unable to see the benefits of having the safe and reliable development of a resource that sits there very quietly in place in northern Alberta, where it's subject to extraction, processing, and safe transportation. And so, I think TMX isn't just good for, the companies, employees, shareholders. It's good for Canada because it will increase revenues to government. It will stabilize our environmental commitments. The profits from it, as the federal government of Canada says, will be put back into clean innovation, which is absolutely the right thing to be doing. So
yes, Canadians are the shareholders. Whenever we talk about shareholders, we always think of some rich, fat cat sitting somewhere in a mansion. But in this case, unless you live in a mansion, it's every Canadian has a little piece of that pie now.
That's right. And, if you're against that pipeline, like or not, I don't want to be unkind to people who believe it's the right thing to oppose the project. I would just say to them, if you're against that pipeline, well, you're also against all the benefits that pipeline creates, including the environmental improvements, the investments in technology and innovation, and the dollars that go to governments to be able to pay for your health care. The fact you can go get that jab or whatever you need from the hospitals. That's, in BC alone, the cost of health care went up by $3 billion annually just for the province of BC over the last 3 years. Where does that extra money come from? Doctors, no one ever says no to the doctors. You can't prescribe that medicine. We find the money, but the money's got to come from somewhere too.
Stewart, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you, Jim.
My guest has been Stewart Muir, Executive Director of the ResourceWorks Society. His website, resourceworks.com. His Twitter handle, @SJMuir. If you have any questions for Stewart or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Find us on Facebook. We're also on Twitter @HowStreet. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.